I am remembering something which is probably from like 2002 or 3. The very first time as a minister, it was with Reverend Sonia over at the Wisdom Center that I was supposed to give a talk about money. And I was so freaking subtle, nobody even knew it happened. So I'm probably not going to be that subtle today. But there are a lot of fun things to think about on this topic. And I don't know about you, but I love to use humor to get me through the things that are a little confounding. Maybe they seem a little daunting. So we're going to do that too. I want to start by saying, excuse me, that already for the whole month we've been talking about finances, and we've started off with a great talk from Reverend Cliff, and we had a couple from Reverend Sonny, and I'm going to contribute a little bit to all of that today. And then April, one of our practitioners, is going to start off our Practitioner Sunday next week with an awesome talk about playing with money. Is that right? So we're just going to lighten this thing up. Why do we want to keep talking about this for 5 weeks in a row? Well, I have a feeling that might be because there's a little bit more to learn about it. After all, we are dealing with the infinite, aren't we? So if we're dealing with the infinite and what we got in front of us doesn't seem like that much, maybe we would like to understand our relationship with the infinite a little better and take a bigger vessel to it, ask for more, make more welcome. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The other reason that I think it's good to talk about this is because even though the divine source is infinite, we human beings have been spending thousands upon thousands of years collecting untruths, amassing and building up hidden beliefs and things that are not true. And guess what? That blessed impersonal law can only give us what we believe. So even though our pile of untruths is not infinite, it's pretty darn big because we've been collecting that stuff for just a little while, right? So there's this idea that if we clear the conduits for our good, we can experience more of it. And if we don't, we experience less. Excuse me. So what I want to start with is this. I want you to say this with me. We're going to say it as we begin, and we're going to say it as we complete our time together. I free my mind to be an open conduit for good. I free my mind to be an open conduit for good. How about one more time because it's morning, right? Okay. I free my mind to be an open conduit for good. Okay. So we're committed. So if our conduit is clear, what happens is that good that we've heard about and read about and seen demonstrated in other people's lives, it's ours too. It's infinite, right? It comes to us easily and effortlessly and unobstructed. It flows like water to every opening that is provided for it. That makes total sense. However, sometimes that's what our consciousness looks like. Look at all that gunk in there, right? Rust, buildup. Think of the buildup, because the buildup is not just what I have come to believe over the course of my life. We have this thing where we share the collective unconscious with everybody else, okay? So we're not only swimming in our own unbeliefs, we are on a regular basis swimming in the unbeliefs of everybody else too. It's a very interesting thing where all this stuff hangs out. We know it most commonly as the subconscious mind. A more technical term is the subjective. Subjective how? It is subject to whatever is added to it or impressed upon it, and it cranks out something that looks just like that. That's the creative process. That's the law of cause and effect in action. And the cosmic kicker, I know so many of us have mentioned this from up here before and in every classroom, is that the law of cause and effect lives on the same street as all of those false beliefs. So what happens is we've got this mechanism that takes every impression that we've ever had and it does something with it. Ernest Holmes calls this soul. And then the oversoul is that collective unconscious of everybody's impressions that they've ever had in the course of all of humanity. And it all hangs out in the subconscious or the subjective, not just the personal, but the universal. And guess what else is there? This creative process, this law of cause and effect, this thing that takes whatever you put into it and makes something happen. And in there, and all that soup is still the water of life, pure, true, clean, untouched. Universal consciousness, still pure, true, clean, undiminished. We just got it all in there together. One of the Science of Mind ministers, I know there's somebody in this room that was with him as a student before moving here, Reverend Dr. Bernardo Montserrat. He made this wonderful metaphysical chart that showed all the extra stuff that psychologists know about, that we collect and dump in there, that we get to work through to clean out our conduits. So as you can imagine, we collect some stories, don't we? We collect stories that end up in there, and they make stuff happen because the law can only give us what we ask of it. And we collect a lot of stories. They are called myths. How about this little image here that I found? If you remove the T from myths, you end up with my higher self. Clever, huh? I don't know if that's what they intended. But we have these myths that we can trade for truth. Now, some of them I want to share with you come from my personal experiences, and I have a feeling that you've got some too. I know that Reverend Sonny talked about a few of them last week. So here are some examples. Maybe you're a little kid and you put your hand out and you say, Mommy, Daddy, somebody, whoever's watching over you, can I have some money for this thing? And they say, oh, no, we can't afford it. My dad had pocket change that he had to decide to either use to pay for a tiny bit of gasoline, which you could actually get for pocket change back then, or give me milk money for school. It was either run the car so he could go to work or give your child some money so she could get lunch at school. It was not fun. Okay, so I got some pretty sucky, okay, I'm going to watch my language because I am up here. I got some pretty bad ideas about money and affordability as a child. And so maybe you had that experience too. Maybe you even thought, let me see if I can need a little less, right? I try not to be hungry. I'll try not to want anything. I'll convince myself that I really didn't want that anyhow. I'll say I'm too cool for that. I'll make up all kinds of stories to help me feel more comfortable accepting this false reality that there isn't enough. That's what we do. And this is not to discount those experiences. They were real, they were painful, and many of us have had experiences of not enough to pay the bills, or we've been hungry. And we know in this room we have rewritten those stories in order to start partaking of a different reality, because that's what we get to do. We get to trade in our myths for truth, one at a time. When do we do that? When they pop up and they show their ugly faces and we say, no, wait a minute, that can't be. So like many of you, I know what I did. One thing was when I went to preschool, it wasn't even preschool. There was preschool and kindergarten, but this was some kind of a, after that, daycare for, dual working parents. And there was this wonderful woman. She looked so scary to all of us. obviously, she was much bigger. She had a hairy chin. She zipped my chin up into my jacket, and it hurt. And my brother had this cool toy, and I have to confess, okay, it would not be the kind of toy that we would give someone today, maybe. It was a toy rifle, okay? My brother said, you can take it to daycare for show and tell as long as you promise that nothing bad happens to it. Okay, so I took it, and she said, you need to learn how to share. And she took it, and she put it in the back of the doorway between the hinge and the door frame and slammed that door and broke that thing in half. And I completely blacked out how my brother responded to that. But I got really confused about sharing. And now that I think about it, this is southern Vermont in the 60s. She was probably just a pacifist and didn't like the fact that it was a gun and not like a teddy bear or something. But all I could think is, I'm not so sure about this sharing thing because I'm in deep doo-doo with my brother now. I'm never going to share again. Of course, I learned to do that anyway. Here's another one. Anybody save up to buy your first bicycle? Okay, I did. We had in first and second grade, we had a savings account, and you brought in your 10 cents, your 5 cents, your 15 cents, your 25 cents. Okay, I'm starting to show you how old I am because that was a lot of money once upon a time. And this first grader saving up little bits of money, by the time I was like 7, I bought my first bicycle. It was pretty cool. It was green enamel with a white vinyl seat and handlebars, no tassels, but it was pretty awesome. And that was fine. Then I saved up at one of my other jobs because, of course, I thought, I know what, I'll start working. Babysitting at 13, started working full-time by the time I was 14, and I would get stuff. So I got this other bike, and I went off to college, and what do you know? I grew up on a dirt road out in the woods in the country, and we didn't lock anything. Well, I took my Fuji 10-speed touring bike to the, after I was fine with it on campus, but when I got an apartment, I just threw it in the basement, along with the other things that were there, and it disappeared right away. It disappeared right away. You know what I learned about that? Not to stop saving and stop wanting bikes and having bikes, but as the saying goes, to trust Allah and tie your camel. I have a bicycle lock now. I've never lost one since. So I learned a little something about my relationship between myself and my good. There's another one, and I think I'm gonna pass that one up for right now. But you get the idea, right? Whether you saved up for a car or a bike or whatever it was. I know what the other one was. Right? Poor kid also didn't have enough for gas and food. Well, clothing, I was so tired of hand-me-downs. I was the youngest of 4 kids. I always got everybody else's stuff. And that was really messing with my identity when I'm like 11 and 12. So I start babysitting at 13, then I start really working hard when I'm 14. And I buy all these new clothes. And I grew out of them in like 2 weeks. I spent all my money on these clothes, and they only fit for like a minute. Right? But I didn't stop wanting those either. These are all things that we get to learn on our life journey between just showing up and taking a breath and starting to discover who we are and what we love and what we'd like our experiences to be about and how on earth, literally, to have those things. So we learn stuff. So a belief system that is clear allows that good to just flow unobstructed. And a belief system that's clogged ends up creating a bit of a delay. Maybe that perfect measure, perfect timing, all that perfect stuff is kind of off. And you finally get what you needed, but the opportunity is past. We don't want that. So we want to learn how to clean it up. And the way that we clean it up is to identify those myths, as Ernest Holmes would say, identify and remove the complex, and get rid of the stuff that's not true to make room for more of what is true. And the law of cause and effect will take care of itself. So somebody else said the key to wealth is quality thoughts. It makes total sense, right? That's what we talk about here all the time. The thing is, the reason I wanted to share those stories with you, and I got a couple more, is because this. If we judge ourselves, if we judge the world, if we judge other people, as somehow counting us out, as somehow leaving us out of this dreamy equation, then we're never going to try. Again, we're going to go back to convincing ourselves, well, I don't really care about fashion anyway. I never wanted a car anyhow. I don't really believe in having my own place to live. We can do that. And sometimes we do it as a defense mechanism. But the truth is, it is safe to dream. This game of life is something that we were created to know how to play, and it was created for us to be in it. It was created for us to be successful in it and to thrive in it. And we do that with quality thoughts by trading out the ones that aren't. So a couple of more stories. It's very interesting. See the pot of gold and all the four-leaf clovers? The personal stories, in contrast to the impersonal law, what we can do is we can change the nature of those stories to a real happy ending like that, but giving the law quality thoughts, right? So here are a couple of inspiring examples. One of them that was shared with us by Home Office that gives us some fodder for some of these talks is that a Science of Mind student somewhere in all of the centers and teaching chapters and so forth was cheated out of $800 while she was in a class. And her instructor and her classmates started affirming that not only did she get that money back, she got more. And here's what happened. What happened is that a friend to whom she had loaned money and never expected repayment for contacted her a day or two later and said, you know what? I just wanted to let you know I've deposited $1,000 in your PayPal account. The universe paid her back with interest. I got all excited because I have an $800 story too. And I shared it with some of you who were in our Wealthy Path class this past Wednesday night. And that is that I had rented a vehicle. I think it was a minivan. All of these things cost less when these stories happen. I rented a minivan from Budget Car Rental in Key West. We were talking about Key West the other day. And it was for, I don't know how many days the charter was supposed to be, but I thought, it's okay, the captain's a nice guy. I'm sure the charter guests are cool. I'll just rent the car myself. I'm just helping. And what happened was the captain fell off the wagon, went on a bender, abandoned the vehicle, and I got the bill. And the bill was for $800 from Budget Rent-A-Car. The next day, I got a job offer. Again, these were the rates for in the 80s for an amazing 8-day charter at $100 a day plus tips. What happened? The universe paid me back plus interest within a day or two. Now, here's something to notice about both of these stories. It does not mean that you need to go bang on that person's door and stand in line with everybody else that they owe money to and try to get yours from that person. Both of them are a demonstration of how the infinite will reach you if you are an open conduit for your good and can imagine that it might come to you by some other means. You don't need to know how. Just be open. Be a set of a lot of open conduits. So that's a really good thing to remember, because when you lose something over here, remember that you live in an infinite universe and what you are desiring or seeking still exists. Every time we create an opening with saving, with sharing, with spending, with giving, what happens is that and more fills that space, because not only is that amount replaced by that flow, but a flow has been created by the movement. And if we will keep many open conduits available, if we will make that good welcome, if we will have dug our ditches and created places for it to flow to all the time, which means, what will I do with more? all the way to the taxes, all the way to the savings, all the way to the investments, all the way to real numbers about that home or that car or that bike or whatever you want, all the way there. Make a path, a clear path, believing. And as you move anything, more comes to replace it. And you will experience flow from the infinite, which has no limits. It also works for time and attention and friendship and helpfulness and everything. Okay? So here's the deal. All we need to do is find and replace. Any of you do a little document creation? I know a bunch of writers are out there, right? Okay. Select all. Find and replace. Find those myths and replace them with truth. And watch what happens. That's all we need to do because, see, all of this is already in place. It already works. It's already working. When we do this on purpose, it works for us. And it's a lot of fun. So I want to end with this, where we started. And before I do, I also want to share with you two things. I have a tea bag tag from the Yogi Tea Company that says, the only thing that can limit you is believing that you are limited. Become limitless. And the other thing that I remembered that I wanted to share is a real simple one from the recovery movement that simply says this: trust God, clean house, and help others. How about that? Okay, so we're going to end with the affirmation that we began with. Say this with me. I free my mind to be a conduit for good. I free my mind to be a conduit for good. I free my mind to be a conduit for good. And so it is. Thank you.